Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope you're having a good day today so far and having a good weekend. I am recording early because of 4th of July tomorrow, and I'm just going to be taking the day off to relax. I don't have to work, so I'm not going to record tomorrow. I'm going to do it for today. And also, I'm trying out a live stream for the first time through StreamYard. I know nobody's on it right now, but I'm just using it while I record this so I can get familiar with StreamYard and how to do a live stream if I do that. And hopefully end up setting up a thing where, Scott and Isaac could come on, even Nate if he wanted to. We used to do that and have these lives on Facebook. We've done that a few times and going on each other's podcasts, but we haven't done that in a really long time, and I think it's just life got in the way. And we just got really busy, and things are really tough. I will say prayers would be greatly appreciated. I did tweet this out yesterday that there is a job opportunity for me to get another job. And as much as I love the people that I work with and my customers, I truly do love my job. But it's just it doesn't pay enough. And with things as expensive as they are, I need to find a place to work that gives me the potential to get promotions and raises. Health benefits would be really great. And I don't have any of that there. I'm at the top. I can't go any higher than what I am. There's not a whole lot of potential for raises. So I'm going to go and I'm going to fill out the paperwork. It's a customer that works there, and she spoke to the HR department on my behalf about working there. So it's my understanding, and if it all works out right, that the job is pretty much mine. I'll start training at the end of July, but I still have to fill out all the paperwork, and then there's a background check and a drug test, which that's no biggie. I can pass that with no problem, and then start training on July 25th, and it offers health benefits from day one, which with my health issues, with my ulcer and my scoliosis and just other things, that would be great to have some health insurance. And then I can save up money to buy a car finally, because it starts at $16 an hour, and she told me that she thinks that I should work towards becoming a team leader there. Obviously that's a promotion, that's a raise, but she thinks that I would do really well with that. So it's a credit card processing company, and what I would be doing is taking phone calls from merchants that are calling about issues with their credit card terminals or their billing statements. And then I don't know necessarily what a team lead does, but I'm assuming you have a small team that kind of works together, how most of that is. So just pray that all works out, because it's just about a couple minutes further from where I'm at now, where I work now. And it seems like a really great opportunity. And no more sweating in 120 degree heat. I don't have to be on my feet all day, which is really hurting my back, and it's just a better opportunity. So please pray that works out. Now let's read our daily promise, which says, "The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil, he shall preserve thy soul." Psalm 121:7. While tragedy may beset us, while we travail in this present age, our assurance is firm. Our great God and Father shall prevent our downfall until that glorious day when we shall stand evermore in victory, ultimate in the name of Christ Jesus our Lord. Praise him till he returns, and then praise him throughout eternity. That's a really good verse to think about with everything that's going on right now. That actually is a really good verse. I like that. I didn't mean to click that. Okay. So let's start. For those of you who don't know, Jordan Peterson He's Canadian. He's really, really big right now. He does like lectures and, you know, he makes these YouTube videos, and it's like, you know, philosophical and maybe even a little spiritual. I really like him. And he got a lot of recognition when they were trying to pass the law in Canada that you could be charged criminally for misgendering somebody. And he fought really hard against that, even though they did pass it. He fought really hard against it, and then he gained a lot of recognition after that. And now he's going to be have a show, I think, like a podcast, I don't know, through Daily Wire. Now, I don't think that means he necessarily works with Daily Wire or for Daily Wire, I mean, but, you know, kind of like how they partner up with PragerU and other things like that, and they put it on their app. So that's really cool. Anyway, so Jordan Peterson was banned from Twitter for a tweet that he put out about Ellen Page. I'm not going to call her Elliot. I'm going to call her Ellen. And, you know, so be it. So be it. Because she's a girl. She's not a boy. Anyway, this is by Paul Saka from Blaze Media. And it says that Jordan Peterson faces a permanent ban on Twitter if he does not delete a tweet about transgender actor Elliot Page. Now, I'm just reading from the article, so I'll read it as it is written. The professor emeritus of psychology at the University of Toronto proclaimed that he would, quote, rather die than conform to Twitter's rules and delete the tweet in question. Peterson's tweet posted on June 22nd read, quote, remember when pride was a sin and Ellen Page just had her breast removed by a criminal physician? In the tweet, Peterson linked to an article titled, Elliot Page is proud to introduce trans character on Umbrella Academy. The article highlighted a new Netflix show, Umbrella Academy, where Page's character switches genders, much like the transgender actor did in 2020. That's not a new show. Umbrella Academy has been out for quite a while now, but okay. In the Rubin Report, host Dave Rubin posted a screenshot of Peterson's tweet with the caption, quote, the insanity continues at Twitter. Jordan Peterson has been suspended for this tweet about Ellen Page. He just told me he will never delete the tweet. Paging Elon Musk. And I agree. Yeah, they're like, well, you're not banned. You can get your account back. Just delete the tweet we don't like. Well, screw you. Not deleting it. And I don't blame him. Twitter said Peterson's tweet violated rules against hateful conduct. Twitter's hateful conduct policy states that users may not, quote, promote violence against or directly attack or threaten other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, caste, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease, end quote. Oh, no? That's not allowed? At Vodka Water Pappy, I'm going to murder Clarence Thomas. At Ryan Kenny, kill Clarence Thomas and his fat wife who gives a crap. At Gypsy Dangero, I don't know how you say that. Yeah, we're going to have to kill Clarence Thomas. At Cameron J. Landry, voting is not enough. We need to kill Clarence Thomas. At Aurora Oral Fixation Z, can someone kill Clarence Thomas? At Sarah Fifi, I'm going to kill Clarence Thomas. At Jeff Passan Real, I will kill Justice Clarence Thomas. Really? Violence and threats not allowed on Twitter? And my guess is that none of these people have had their accounts deleted or banned, for that matter. And we can even look. No, I mean, I don't know, because, I mean, and look, it's just, they all look the same, right? They all look the same. Nope, our account's still up, or his. Twitter does not care about that kind of stuff. Depends on what side of the aisle you lie on. Quote, "We recognize that if people experience abuse on Twitter, it can jeopardize their ability to express themselves. Research has shown that some groups of people are disproportionately targeted with abuse online. This includes women, people of color, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual individuals, marginalized, and historically underrepresented communities. For those who identify with multiple underrepresented groups, abuse may be more common, more severe in nature, and more harmful. We are committed to combating abuse motivated by hatred, prejudice, or intolerance, particularly abuse that seeks to silence the voices of those who have been historically marginalized. For this reason, we prohibit behavior that targets individuals or groups with abuse based on their perceived membership in a protected category." Twitter suspended Peterson's account and would not reinstate the account until he deleted the post about the transgender actor. Peterson's daughter, Michaela Peterson, said Twitter is, quote, "definitely not a free speech platform at the moment." Nope, it's not. The best-selling author definitely responded to his Twitter suspension in a 14-minute long YouTube video. During the diatribe, he said he would not bend the knee to the quote-unquote toxic rat hole social media platform. He said, quote, "I've essentially been banned from Twitter as a consequence. I say banned, although technically I've been suspended, but the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question, and I would rather die than do that. Hopefully it will not come to that, although who the hell knows in these increasingly strange days. Since Twitter did not do me a favor of actually specifying my crime, and there are many possibilities on that front, we unfortunately have to guess at why this has occurred, and that's actually a big problem in and of itself, and also indicative of the utter carelessness of the Twitter organization with regard to the propriety of its own censorial actions. I should at least know exactly what I did wrong if I'm required to acknowledge that my tweet violated the Twitter rules. What rules, you sons of bees?" Exactly. Precisely. Because such things matter when the accusations start flying. I don't regard pride as a virtue. It has been classically regarded as a sin. He questioned why it is called Pride Month and is not called LGBT Plus Month, or whatever else alphabet acronym which is currently insisted upon as the only acceptable enlightened terminology. Peterson theorized that referring to Elliot Page as her previous name, Ellen Page, was likely what got his Twitter account suspended. Oh, he dead named. Quote, "I committed the fatal crime of what has come to be known in the polysensorial terminology of the insane activists as dead naming, which is the fact of referring to someone who has transitioned, another hated piece of jargon and slogan, by the name and by the inference, the gender, really the sex, that everyone knew them by previously." Peterson continued his rant, "And how can I describe the fact that someone who was once a woman and really still is, had her breasts cut off because she, he, they, their, they had fallen prey to a viciously harmful fad without using the appropriate sex-linked pronoun and the real name of the real person to whom this was really done with his, her, their voluntary but unfortunate acquiescence. I'm not taking down the tweet or acknowledging that my tweet violated the Twitter rules. Up yours, work moralist. We'll see who cancels who. Twitter's a rat hole in the final analysis, and I probably contributed to that while trying to use, understand, and master that horrible, toxic platform. It's a relief in some real sense to be banned, and I regard that under the present conditions as a badge of honor." Similarly, the satirical news website Babylon Bee was suspended from Twitter in March. The Babylon Bee was also suspended for, quote, hateful conduct for writing, "The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine." Levine, who is transgender, was named... Okay, we know who that is. The Babylon Bee CEO, Seth Dillon, proclaimed, quote, "We're not deleting anything. Truth is not hate speech. If the cost of telling the truth is the loss of our Twitter account, then so be it." End quote. The official Twitter account has been suspended since March. Yeah. It's really... Because it's not hate speech. They're just trying to censor truth, right? And I would have to agree with Jordan Peterson that that is a criminal doctor who cut her breast off. She was healthy. There was no need for her to have her breast removed, and he did it anyway. The first thing of the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm. Well, they just did a whole lot of harm. So when they talked about his Twitter being suspended, they talked about testosterone in women is linked to an increased risk of metabolic disorders and cancer. Testosterone increases metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes in women, but reduces it in men, almost like they're different. So it says, from the largest study to date on the genetic regulation of sex hormone levels from the University of Cambridge and Exeter, also found that higher testosterone levels increases the risk of breast and endometrial cancers in women. So the health risk and complications of double mastectomies. So not only the sex hormones have high risk for women, but then having a double mastectomy also is high risk. This is from Cancer Research UK and breastcancer.org. Blood clots, bleeding, infection, nerve pain, heart attack, stroke, kidney failure, and pneumonia. And then there's health risk and complications of phalloplasty for trans patients from the Journal of Sexual Medicine. So hair or stone formation in the urethra, 5%. Infections, about 14% of which require removal of the prosthetic. Partial skin flap loss, 12.9%, i.e. death loss of sections of the skin used to make the fake penis. Urethral blockage, 24.8%, and urethrocontaineous fistula, 49.5%. That's urine leaking from new holes or wrong holes. So there you go. The Supreme Court's EPA ruling and how it could gut Biden's Great Reset plan, which is actually perfect because, we would love for, the Great Reset not to be able to take place, right? It's a horrible thing. So, a Biden admin plan to roll out new ESG rules may have been jeopardized after the U.S. Supreme Court limited the Environmental Protection Agency's regulatory powers Thursday. Legal experts say that the court's 6-3 ruling that the EPA cannot regulate power plant emissions without congressional authority has far-reaching implications for President Joe Biden's climate change initiatives, including major new rules being developed by federal agencies. One such rule is a proposed regulation from the Securities and Exchange Commission to force companies to disclose their carbon emissions. That controversial rule is related to the Great Reset movement's push for environmental, social, and governance scores, or ESG scores, that signal to financial investors which companies are committed to fighting climate change or embracing left-wing causes. The SEC's climate disclosure rule would require registered companies, quote, to provide certain climate-related information in their registration statements and annual reports, end quote. If the rule is enacted, companies would have to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions, which could then become a factor that would negatively impact a company's ESG score. However, the Supreme Court's reasoning in West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency, particularly surrounding the quote-unquote major questions, legal doctrine brings into question the SEC's authority to implement climate rules, according to legal experts. John Pendergrass, Vice President for Programs and Publications at the Environmental Law Institute, a DC-based nonprofit, told Financial Advisor the court's EPA ruling makes it unclear that the SEC's proposed rule is legal. He says, quote, although the court's decision in West Virginia versus EPA doesn't directly affect the SEC climate disclosure rule, it certainly suggests the SEC, as well as every other agency, needs to emphasize the clear statutory basis for any new rule. I've also noticed that anytime you have an agency that's an alphabet agency, it's all a scam usually. The SEC, the EPA, the CIA, the FBI, the CDC, they're all scams, right? Well, can we just abolish all alphabet agencies, please? Okay. Under the major questions doctrine, an executive branch agency must have clear statutory authorization from Congress before it can regulate issues that have a broad impact on society. Chief Justice John Roberts cited this doctrine in his majority opinion, finding that the EPA did not have the power to require coal-based power plants to switch to fossil fuel alternatives. Quote, the basis for the decision is essentially applicable across all the regulatory agencies, and we'd expect many actions by the SEC and other federal regulators to quickly become bullseyes for corporate America. Dennis Kelleher, CEO of Better Markets, told Reuters. He said the SEC's proposed rule was, quote, an obvious potential early target, end quote, for further legal challenges after the EPA decision. Still, some believe it is within the SEC's power to require companies to disclose emissions information. Former SEC attorney Wale Arola, counsel at Figre Drinker, told financial advisor that, quote, under the principle leaned on by the High Court in the EPA case, the SEC should be cautious as it approaches finishing its climate disclosure rules. I think the EPA ruling would influence what requirements makes it into the final version of the rulemaking, end quote. But since the proposed disclosure rules are still related to financial information, Oriola said the Supreme Court would defer to the SEC's interpretation of its own regulatory authority under the, quote, Chevron deference legal doctrine. Congress, quote, gave the agency authority to promulgate disclosure requirements that are necessary or appropriate in the public interest or for the protection of investors, end quote. This view was shared by climate change activists and shareholder advocates. Quote, we do not think yesterday's SCOTUS rule on EPA Clean Air Act will have an impact on any court challenge to the SEC proposed rule on climate disclosure, end quote, said Andrew Behar, CEO of As You Sow, a California-based shareholder advocacy group that promotes, quote, environmental and social corporate responsibility. He also said the new SEC rule that will require corporate disclosure be accurate, verified, and included in the audit is the most basic requirement of good governance in commerce. It simply ensures trust between companies and their share owners. However, opponents of the SEC's rule are expected to cite the Supreme Court's EPA decision in their legal challenges. Quote, even before, it was clear that the SEC might have had a difficult time escaping judicial skepticism about the scope of agency authority to act in the climate area. Howard Fisher, a partner at Moses & Singer and former SEC attorney, told Reuters, quote, the SEC's argument that climate risk is finance risk is not likely to find a sympathetic ear at the Supreme Court. So, good on the Supreme Court for making some really, really good opinions lately, with Roe v. Wade and then, the gun law in New York, where that came forward, and this, it's just really, really good. But since we're speaking of alphabet agencies being a scam, this is written back on May 24th of this year by Bethany Blankley, the Center Square contributor, but I wanted to update it because I had talked on a previous episode saying that I didn't hear a whole lot of people talking about it except a handful of the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty, which would hand over a country's health sovereignty, and then the WHO would decide what to do health-wise for these countries that signed it. So it says, Biden administration poised to hand over U.S. health sovereignty to the WHO. Delegates from 194 countries, led by the United States, are expected this week to vote to relinquish their respective countries' sovereignty and grant autonomous power to the World Health Organization over international health events. They are expected to approve amendments proposed by the Biden admin to the International Health Regulations Treaty that, quote, defines countries' rights and obligations in handling public health events and emergencies that have the potential to cross borders. The IHR amendments legally authorize the WHO to order international lockdowns and mandates, require countries to report citizen data, including their DNA and other information, and collect this information in part to restrict travel. Delegates convene this week at the 75th World Health Assembly, the legislative body of the World Health Organization, at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. At the assembly, the U.S. delegate expressed support for the new surveillance system, saying changes to the IHR would, quote, improve the global health architecture systems and tools to prevent, prepare, and respond to the next pandemic. Improving and modernizing IHR is critical to ensuring the world is better prepared for and can respond to the next pandemic. The United States of America looks forward to working with member states to move forward on this important issue, strengthening our collective ability to prevent, detect, and respond to future pandemics, end quote. The amendments change the time period for when countries can opt out to change their vote to 6 months from when the amendments are adopted. Once approved, they would become effective in November 2022 after the U.S. midterm elections and before new members of Congress are sworn in. So originally, I had said this before, that time period was 18 months, and they changed and adapted the amendment to 6 months so that by the time the elections are over in November and the new politicians are sworn in, that 6-month period has already passed, because the ones that were in Congress before the election are not going to sign off on it and are not going to backtrack and opt out of it. And then the 6 months is gone before the new people get in who would opt out of it, but it's too late. That's exactly why they changed it from 18 months to 6 months. The adoption of the amendments don't require approval of 2/3 of the U.S. Senate. Liberty Counsel founder and chairman Matt Staver argues the amendments are another example of the lawlessness of the Biden administration. Quote, the proposed amendments would give the WHO global jurisdiction over the United States to declare health emergencies. The Orlando-based religious liberty organization has consistently fought the Biden administration mandates in court and won. Quote, we have already seen the lawless abuse of power under Joe Biden by the Centers for Disease Control, which the courts have fortunately blocked. Americans would have very little recourse against the WHO, Staver added. The WHO has sovereign immunity and an international court in the, The Hague? I don't know, would not consider the constitutional rights of Americans. America must not give up its sovereignty to the WHO. These amendments must be withdrawn immediately, end quote. The Biden admin submitted the amendments without notifying Congress, without issuing an official statement, or holding a news conference. In early 2020, Americans first heard from the White House, quote, 2 weeks to slow the spread of the coronavirus. President Donald Trump declared a national emergency, and state governors subsequently issued lockdowns. More than 2 years later, the lockdowns have since proven to be ineffective in preventing the spread or any other disease. Instead, they contributed to patients not having access to preventative treatments, critical care for cancer and other patients, increased suicides and worsening mental health issues, significant leaning gaps in educational outcomes, widespread employment losses, and increased national debt, critics contend. Now the White House has proposed giving the WHO authority to impose global lockdowns and relinquishing U.S. sovereignty in the process. Doing so, the UN argues in its report, quote, the title of the report is COVID-19, Make It the Last Pandemic, is because the global body could have prevented the spread of the virus if the WHO had control over all independent country responses. No, they couldn't have. No, they couldn't have. It just isn't going to happen. And if we give the WHO that sovereignty first of all, if we allow it to happen as citizens and not fight back against that and take a stand and say, no, you're not going to do that, and if you do, you will face the repercussions of not being elected. We will take you out. We will impeach you. Maybe, I don't know, suggest imprisonment. I feel like this is a bit of treason and sedition to hand over a country's sovereignty without the will of the people being behind it. It states, quote, in its current form, the WHO does not possess such powers. To move on with the treaty, WHO therefore needs to be empowered, financially and politically. The treaty should possess an adaptable incentive regime, including sanctions such as public reprimands, economic sanctions, or denial of benefits. There are so many words that I would love to say, but I can't. But I just want to tell the WHO, the CDC, the whoever else other alphabet agency that wants to take full control, the World Economic Forum, the Biden administration, screw you. You think that you are so above the law, the Constitution, the people, that you can just do whatever you want? And while that may happen, the possibility of that happening is very real. And it's going to ruin the lives of not just Americans, but the lives of other people in other countries that are choosing to be a part of this. It's going to cause chaos and misery and poverty. I can guarantee that. It's going to be awful. And there may be nothing we can do to stop it. But what I do know is one day they will be held accountable. They may slip accountability here on earth, but the accountability that they're going to face after they die, much worse than anything they could face here. Any punishment that we could dole out to them, much worse. And you'll rue the day that you decided that you were God above the true God. Continuing on. According to the WHO, the IHR would require global surveillance and a digital health passport to be able to legally travel. It states the regulations, quote, are an instrument of international law that is legally binding on 196 countries, including the 194 WHO member states. They create rights and obligations for countries, including the requirement to report public health events. The regulations also outline the criteria to determine whether or not a particular event constitutes a, quote-unquote, public health emergency of international concern. It requires countries, quote, to designate a national IHR focal point for communications with WHO, to establish and maintain core capacities for surveillance and response, including at designated points of entry. Additional provisions address the areas of international travel and transport, such as the health documents required for international traffic, end quote. According to the amendments, in Article 6, when the WHO informs a country that it poses a, quote, potential risk of a public health emergency, it is required to hand over public health information of its citizens, including, quote, genetic sequence data, within 48 hours. As of March 31st, 2020, the U.S. gave the most money to the WHO. By July 2020, Trump formally withdrew the U.S. from the WHO. Biden reinstated U.S. membership in the WHO and led to charge to implement global health surveillance through international law. So that's what's going on. You should be aware. I don't think that anything has been set in stone, but the fact that this is taking place is just nuts. So this is the treaty here, strengthening WHO preparedness for and response to health emergencies, proposal for amendments to the international health regulations. So this was April 12th, 2022. There's quite a bit of pages, I think. But here it says, the permanent mission of the United States of America to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva presents its compliments to the World Health Organization and refers to the international health regulations. In accordance with Article 55 of the IHR, the United States of America is proposing amendments to the IHR. The mission, by means of this note, and in accordance with Article 55 of the IHR, respectfully requests the Director General of the WHO to communicate the text of the attached proposed IHR amendments to all states parties at least 4 months before the 75th World Health Assembly. We are also transmitting via this note a letter to WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom from the Assistant Secretary for Global Affairs of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Lois Pace, reiterating the critical importance of strengthening the IHR, along with other efforts to strengthen the ability of the WHO and member states to prevent, detect, and respond to future public health emergencies of international concern. The permanent mission of the United States of America avails itself of this opportunity to renew the WHO the assurances of its highest consideration. And then there's proposed amendments. It says explanation of changes. The proposed new text is shown in bold underline, and proposed deletions to existing text is shown in strike through. All other text would remain unchanged. So, Article 5, surveillance. Each state party shall develop, strengthen, and maintain as soon as possible, but no later than 5 years from the entry to force of these regulations for the state party, the capacity to detect, assess, notify, and report events in accordance with these regulations as specified in Annex 1. So here's what they want to change. This capacity will be periodically reviewed through the Universal Health Periodic Review Mechanism. Should such review identify resource constraints and other challenges in attaining these capacities, WHO and its regional offices shall, upon the request of a state party, provide or facilitate technical support and assist in mobilization of financial resources to develop, strengthen, and maintain such capacities. And here's a new one. WHO shall develop early warning criteria for assessing and progressively updating the national, regional, or global risk posed by an event of unknown causes or sources, and shall convey this risk assessment to states parties in accordance with Articles 11 and 45 where appropriate. The risk assessment shall indicate, based on the best available knowledge, the level of risk of potential spread and risk of potential serious public health impacts based on assessed infectiousness and severity of the illness. Article 6, the notification. So what they're changing is that within 48 hours of the national IHR focal point receiving the relevant information. Also, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Organization for Animal Health, the UN Environment Program, or other relevant entities who shall immediately notify the relevant entities. So all of these people are going to be notified about any medical health concern or anything like that. And they're also going to have the WHO continue to communicate by the most efficient means of communication available. Timely, accurate, and sufficiently detailed public health information available to it on the notified event where possible, including genetic sequence data, which that's the new thing that they put in, case definitions, laboratory results, source and type of the risk, number of cases and deaths, conditions affecting the spread of the disease and the health measures employed, and report when necessary the difficulties faced and support needed in responding to the potential public health emergency of international concern. Article 9, other reports. Everything is the same except they took out, before taking any action based on such reports, WHO shall consult with and attempt to obtain verification from the state party in whose territory the event is allegedly occurring in accordance with the procedure set forth in Article 10. So, it says, WHO may take into account reports from sources other than notifications or consultations and shall assess these reports according to established epidemiological principles and then communicate information on the event to the state party in whose territory the event is allegedly occurring. Now, they took out the fact that they have to verify it. They don't have to. Article 10, verification. Within 24 hours of receiving information, the WHO shall request, not in accordance with Article 9 now, but just request verification from a state party of reports from sources other than notifications or consultations of events which may constitute a public health emergency of international concern. Pursuant to foregoing paragraph, and they're taking out Article 9, each state party, when requested by WHO, shall verify and provide, quote, within 24 hours, an initial reply to or acknowledgement of the request from WHO. Within 24 hours, available public health information on the status of events referred to in the WHO's request, and information to WHO in the context of an assessment under Article 6, including relevant information as described in paragraphs 1 and 2 of that article. 3. When WHO receives information of event that may constitute a public health emergency of international concern, it shall offer within 24 hours to collaborate with the state party concerned in assessing the potential for international disease spread. And then you have this one, within 24 hours of receiving a WHO offer of collaboration, the state party may request additional information supporting the offer. WHO shall provide such information within 24 hours. When 48 hours have elapsed since the initial WHO offer of collaboration, failure by the state party to accept the offer of collaboration shall constitute rejection for the purposes of sharing available information with states parties under paragraph 4 of this section. If the state party does not accept the offer of collaboration within 48 hours, WHO shall, when justified by the magnitude of the public health risk, immediately share with other states parties the information available to it. So yeah, then you have Article 11. The WHO shall send to all states, parties, and as appropriate to relevant governmental organizations. I don't want to read all this. But this is just provision of information by the WHO. Says WHO determines it is necessary that such information be made available to other states' parties to make informed, timely risk assessments. So, WHO shall annually report to the Health Assembly on all activities under this article, including instances of sharing information that has not been verified by a state party on whose territory an event that may constitute a public health emergency of international concern is or is allegedly occurring with states parties through alert systems. So, I mean, there's lots of amendments here. So, it's a lot to go through, but I will put a link to this in the description so that you can follow it. Moving on, I don't know how many people have heard this, that R. Kelly was sentenced to 30 years in prison following a sex trafficking conviction. I knew that he messed around with minors, but I did not know he was part of a sex trafficking. So, I'm not going to read all of this, but he was sentenced to 30 years in prison following a positive conviction on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. The U.S. District Judge Ann Donnelly handed down the sentence following a 3-hour hearing. Kelly showed no outward reaction and did not address the court after sentencing. The victims held hands as the decision was read. Unlike Kelly, the victims were not silent during the hearing. Quote, "You made me do things that broke my spirit. I literally wish I would die because of how low you made me feel. Do you remember that?" That's one victim. And another victim tearfully said that Kelly being sentenced made her believe in justice. Quote, "I once lost hope, but you restored my faith. I was afraid, naive, and didn't know how to handle the situation. Silence is a very lonely place." The Daily Wire reported that a jury found the recording artist, whose full name is Robert Sylvester Kelly, guilty in September 2021 after a month-long trial that included no fewer than 50 separate witness testimonies. Prosecutors recounted the singer's decades of crime and callous disregard for the very real effects that his crimes had on his victims. They were seeking at least 25 years in prison for Kelly, with as much as life sentence on the line for violating the Mann Act, which prohibits transportation across state lines of women and girls for an immoral purpose. The defendant's decades of crime appear to have been fueled by narcissism and a belief that his musical talent absolved him of any need to conform his conduct, no matter how predatory, harmful, humiliating, or abusive to others, to the strictures of the law. They went on saying Kelly's actions were brazen, manipulative, controlling, and coercive. He has shown no remorse or respect for the law. Quote, "Put simply, Kelly's crimes were calculated, methodical, and part of a long-standing pattern of using his platform as a larger-than-life musical persona and his deep network to gain access to teenagers, many of whom were particularly vulnerable, and then to exploit them for his personal gain and sexual gratification." Kelly famously married singer Aaliyah when she was just 15 years old. I didn't know that. Coercing her to lie and say she was 18 at the time. Aaliyah is believed to be one of the singer's many victims. She died in a plane crash in 2001 when she was 22. I remember that. So yeah, good. Finally, someone getting justice. Now, when are all the people on the list of Ghislaine Maxwell's list of people she sent girls to? When is that list going to come out and those people get justice? And also, if you didn't know this, I'm not going to pull up an article, but she was put on suicide watch, even without a psych eval. So, I say by the end of July, we're going to find out that she committed suicide, I think. Really quickly, some update on Amber Heard from the Daily Wire. Amber Heard, under foreign criminal investigation and smuggling case, told others to lie to authorities, by Ryan Severda. It says, Amber Heard, who was mocked and criticized after losing her defamation lawsuit against ex-husband Johnny Depp, is reportedly under criminal investigation in Australia. Quote, "The 36-year-old actress is the subject of an ongoing perjury investigation related to court proceedings stemming from her infamous visit to Queensland with Depp in 2015, when she broke Australia's strict quarantine and biosecurity laws by failing to declare the former couple's Yorkshire Terriers, Pistol and Boo, when she flew into the country. Heard was charged with 2 counts of illegally importing the animals in July 2015. However, the case was closed when she pled guilty to falsifying travel documents in a Gold Coast court in April 2016. The report said that Australian officials have confirmed that they are currently investigating Heard for perjury for allegedly lying to law enforcement about the circumstances surrounding her importation of the dogs into the country. Quote, the department's perjury investigation stems from testimony given by a former employer of Depp during his UK libel case against the Sun newspaper in 2020. Depp's former estate manager Kevin Murphy raised eyebrows down under when he told the London court that Heard had ordered him to lie on oath after she flew the pets into Queensland in a private jet without declaring them, end quote. The two dogs were supposed to be placed under quarantine for 10 days, and when it was discovered that they were never placed under quarantine, the couple was given 3 days to get the dogs out of the country or they would be put down. Quote, Heard eventually pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of falsifying an immigration document and accepted a fine of 10,000 Australian dollars, which is 7,650 American, after her lawyer, Jeremy Kirk, insisted that the paper for the dogs had slipped through the cracks and that there was no attempt to deceive, the report continued. Heard's version of events went unchallenged until July 2020, when Depp's former estate manager told London's High Court in a written statement that he had repeatedly warned the actress about Australia's strict animal entry rules. Murphy said in the statement to the court that he had repeatedly told Heard that, quote, that trying to take the dogs into Australia without completing the mandatory process was illegal and could result in very harsh penalties, including euthanizing the dogs. Says, when I expressed that I was extremely uncomfortable with this, Miss Heard said to me, quote, well, I want your help on this. I wouldn't want you to have a problem with your job. It became very apparent that Miss Heard was threatening my job stability unless I cooperated with providing a declaration that supported her false account for the Australian proceedings. Because of this, I felt extreme pressure to cooperate, despite knowing this would involve being untruthful, end quote. Murphy told the British newspaper that he had been contacted by the FBI about the matter and agreed to cooperate with Australia's criminal investigation. So, she's in for, some stuff as well. Where's that one that I wanted to look at? Okay. Really quickly, I want to talk about this fool here. About the liberal world order. Brian Deese, who's White House director of the National Economic Council, said during a CNN interview Thursday afternoon that American families who were suffering from historic gas prices needed to understand that it was for, quote, the future of the liberal world order, end quote, even if they can't afford it. Deese made the tone-deaf remarks during an interview on CNN's newsroom with co-host Victor Blackwell after Blackwell noted that U.S. officials have indicated that the war in Ukraine could last years. Quote, the military analyst, the director of national intelligence, they say that this could be a long war measured in years, and I think everybody understands why this is happening. But is it sustainable? What do you say to those families who say, quote, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable. So Deese responded, well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm. But at the same time, what I'd say to that family, to Americans across the country, is you have a president administration that is going to do everything in its power to blunt those price increases and bring those prices down. End quote. So gas prices were already skyrocketing before the war. We know that. Deese's remarks come after President Joe Biden told reporters earlier in the day at brief question and answer session while in Madrid at a North Atlantic Treaty Organization summit that Americans should expect to suffer, quote, as long as it takes, end quote, to beat Russia in Ukraine. Quote, the war has pushed prices up, a reporter said. They could go as high as $200 a barrel, some analysts think. How long is it fair to expect American drivers and drivers around the world to pay that premium for this war? Biden responded, as long as it takes. So Russia cannot, in fact, defeat Ukraine and move beyond Ukraine. This is a critical position for the world. Here we are. Why do we have NATO? I told Putin that, in fact, if he were to move, we would move to strengthen NATO. We would move to strengthen NATO across the board. 2 days ago, but a good way to end Pride Month and something to take a look at when we're about to celebrate 4th of July. The birth of our country, the birth of freedom and liberty and the right to live your life in the way that is right. Liberty is living your life and doing what is right, not just doing whatever you want and whatever feels good no matter what. we should have reverence for our flag, for our country, for the people who have fought and died to keep us a free country and the most powerful and actually inclusive and tolerant country in the world. We are more inclusive and tolerant than any other country there is. And we need to be proud to be Americans again. I'm proud to be an American. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I thank God that this is where I was born. And I was born free. But we're not going to stay free if we don't stand up for what's right and take back our country. With the legislative process, Congress, in the Senate, local communities, governor, mayor, the education, Board of Education, get on there. That's the only way that we're going to take back this country. Getting someone into the office of president that's going to do what is right for Americans and children and, take care of our country again and put us first again like Trump was doing. That is what we need to focus on, and we need to continue to move forward and take back our country. Well, I'm going to end this episode here. I hope you had a good day with me. Really do check into the WHO pandemic treaty and take a look at the amendments that have been written out from our government to the WHO because, they're suggesting that they're going to sign this. And you're going to want to look at what they are suggesting and also find out how you can fight against it. Call your senators, call your representatives, do something. Don't just accept it for what it is. At least try to fight against it. Don't forget, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch my videos there, like and share the videos. You can leave me a comment. Please subscribe to the channel. That would be really great. And then you can also find me over on Rumble, where I'm not censored. And if you want to watch this full episode, you'll have to go to Rumble because I'm going to have to cut the last part out about the pride flag. I will get a strike if I absolutely keep that up on my video on YouTube. So if you want to see the whole thing, go to my Rumble channel. Just got to say something 21. And subscribe there. Leave me a comment. Watch and share my videos there. My link tree is in my description, and you can get to all of my social media accounts. I'm most active on Twitter if you want to, have a conversation there. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Have a wonderful 4th of July. God bless.